It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. Taken for a ride over illegal migration, the government's message to the public as the Prime Minister promised to stop small boats.
If you come here illegally, you can't claim asylum. You can't benefit from our modern slavery protections. You can't make spurious human rights claims. And you can't stay.
The former military bases where illegal migrants may be detained and then removed, but we hear the opposition there and in Parliament. And on the shores of northern France, the migrants who tell us they won't be deterred and question whether there's any legal way for them to get into Britain. Also tonight. The final moments of a little girl gunned down in her home, Olivia Pratt-Corbell's murder, as recounted by her mother. Blowing the whistle on its railway strikes, the hardline union suspending industrial action tonight. Burning coal to see off the cold, while the freezing weather has forced electricity generators to use the dirtiest fuel. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30. Hello there, good evening. The Prime Minister said the current migration system is unfair on the British people today as he pledged to stop small boat crossings in the English Channel. Illegal migrants could be held out of reach of the courts for the first 28 days of detention and in most cases wouldn't be able to appeal until out of the country. The United Nations Refugee Agency said the government's plans amount to an asylum ban. Tonight, we'll look at the barriers, both legal and practical, to Rishi Sunak delivering on his pledge, and hear from migrants waiting to cross the Channel near Calais. But first, our political correspondent, Ali Fortescue, has this report.
We've got to somehow break the cycle.
On the Kent coast this morning, a Prime Minister determined to succeed where his predecessors failed.
You can do it from here.
Yes.
As border force grapple with thousands of Channel crossings, a bold new plan to stop the boats.
If you come here illegally, you can't claim asylum. You can't benefit from our modern slavery protections. You can't make spurious human rights claims. And you can't stay. We will detain those who come here illegally and then remove them in weeks.
Where do you think your predecessors went wrong? Why are you different? And can I also ask, what does success look like to you? Will you be setting targets for where you want the numbers to be in a year's time?
So this is not about dwelling on the past, because the situation has just got far worse unless we do something novel, that we do something bold to try and stop it. And that's what our legislation today does. Now, success is us stopping the boats.
Earlier in the day, it was a Home Secretary setting out a plan that may well end up being defended in court.
I am confident that this bill is compatible with international obligations.
The practicalities are enormous, but the message clear.
For a government not to respond to waves of illegal migrants breaching our borders would be to betray the will of the people we were elected to serve. Their sense of fair play has been tested beyond its limits, and they've seen the country taken for a ride.
Shadow Home Secretary.
But for Labour, it's just more of the same.
The Home Secretary has said anyone who arrives illegally will be deemed inadmissible and either returned to the country they arrived from or a safe third country. Only that wasn't this Home Secretary, it was the last one. And that wasn't this bill, it was the last one, passed only a year ago, which did not work.
And there were moments of high emotion.
That I will never vote for legislation that would have led to my parents being detained and dumped in Rwanda.
The government want immigration to become a dividing line with Labour at the next election. They know this is traditional, safe Tory ground that could sway votes. The trouble is, it's not just about talking tough on immigration, it's about delivering. And there is no sense, at least in the short term, that this legislation alone can do that. His party are on side for now. Rishi Sunak has gone further than his predecessors, but that doesn't mean he'll stop the boats. Ali Fortescue, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, the illegal migration bill is broad in its sweep and ambition. It would legislate a legal duty for the Home Secretary to remove anyone entering the UK illegally. The bill allows the detention of illegal arrivals without judicial review for 28 days or until they can be removed. In 2021, the UK had just over 2,500 detention places. That's at current levels of migration, less than 20% of the capacity needed. Migrants won't be able to use modern slavery laws to stop their removal, and challenges will only be heard after they have left the UK. The Home Secretary told MPs she would not yet address the full legal complexities of the bill. An annual cap on the number of refugees being accepted by the UK will be decided by MPs in Westminster. Migrants arriving by illegal routes risk a permanent ban on settlement, citizenship and re-entry to the UK. Our Communities correspondent Lisa Holland reports now from Essex on the potential impact of the plans.
It's thought sites like this isolated former RAF base in Essex are being eyed up by the government as places to house large numbers of asylum seekers instead of costly hotels. In nearby Wethersfield, a pretty village, people tell us they've heard rumours, unconfirmed. The plan is for 1,500 male asylum seekers, and they're not happy.
They shouldn't be letting them anywhere near us. I don't think they should get as far as being in this country, to be perfectly honest, because they're coming from other countries, about 10 countries wide. Why do they all come right over to us? Because we're soft touch?
This approach of dealing with it as an emergency and panicking almost into selecting locations that aren't appropriate, away from good accessibility, good services, the local services, the health services, the schools, just can't accommodate that kind of scale of development.
The government will hope the prospect of being detained somewhere like this will deter asylum seekers. But it's difficult to see how the threat to then deport them will be effective, given that so few have been successfully removed in the past. Ali is from Iran and came to the UK by small boat last year. He says from countries like his, there's no alternative way to claim asylum in the UK.
What is the legal way? Do you think that people who are danger in their home country could go to any UK embassy and ask for asylum? No, there's no way to do that. No one could choose this dangerous way to travel, to left his homeland, to left his home country, to find nothing.
Whatever bold pledges the government is making, in reality, a flight to send asylum seekers to Rwanda last summer never took off, and the policy remains stuck in the courts.
What it doesn't explain is where you're going to send them back to. So you have to have countries who are willing to accept them. At the moment, we only have 6 countries. So what's going to happen is, where are these people going to go? And we haven't got the return agreements. We needed at least 200 return agreements with different countries before we even attempted something like this.
Yet again, the government is trying to send a message that reaching Britain won't be a dream come true for asylum seekers. The fact is, no policy to date has achieved that. Lisa Holland, Sky News, Essex.
On the North French coast today, migrants we spoke to didn't know they were the subject of another attempt to prevent them crossing. One we spoke to said if he was deported, he would come back. Our Europe correspondent Siobhan Robbins reports.
In the migrant camps in northern France, it's Mother Nature that calls the shots. Many here are waiting to catch small boats to the UK. Today, it was the weather which disrupted those crossings, not an announcement from Westminster. Izay, like most people we met, was unaware of the planned crackdown. His wife is sick with cancer in the UK. He'll get to her any way possible.
If you go on the boat, you could die. If you get caught in the UK, you could get deported and never go back. Will you still try?
Yes.
Why?
Because I'm been fed up. I'm enough. How long been separate, my wife, my son? How long I'm been separate? I'm been 10 years no see my son.
The perilous channel crossings are often the final leg of a long journey. Many have fled war. Some have been abused and beaten. But like 19-year-old Afghan Jabba, they won't give up on their UK dreams. If they send us away, we'll come back, he says. And if they send me to Rwanda, I haven't committed a crime, so I'll come back. And today, the criminal gangs controlling this shoreline seemed undeterred. As we filmed, we heard deals for future crossings.
Breaking the traffickers' grip here won't be easy. Smugglers earn hundreds of thousands of pounds controlling this route. One told us even if people were sent to the Amazon, they keep on trying to get to the UK.
Charity workers fear tougher rules in the UK could make crossings riskier.
I think there's a very good chance they could get more dangerous. People are going to want to take riskier routes to try and go hidden. And then there's going to be higher levels of exploitation when they get to the UK because they're going to be pushed underground.
In the UK, though, many people feel like they've had enough, that the system's being abused. What's your response to that?
Unfortunately, what the British public have heard is not the truth. And a lot of the anger, I understand, but it's misdirected because of misinformation.
Here, the desperation feeds determination. And without more safe routes, smugglers will keep on risking people's lives. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Northern France.
Well, Ali, Fortescue is in Downing Street tonight, and the government has certainly set out its stall here, Ali, thrown the kitchen sink even at the small boats issue, and the Prime Minister's promise, a big political risk with no guarantee of success.
Yes, and Anna, I think it's worth saying, this is the Rishi Sunak that the government want you to see, talking tough on immigration, standing behind a podium branded "Stop the Boats." What has been announced today is something new, it is something difficult, it is something pretty radical, but as the Prime Minister himself has said, it's not the magic bullet. This is part of a kind of broader strategy. No coincidence he's going to France at the end of the week to meet the French president. There are massive practical challenges, not least the question with this legislation of how the government would deport and detain thousands of people if it doesn't act as a deterrent. 45,000 people crossed the channel last year, 160,000 in limbo in this country waiting for asylum. But remember, Rishi Sunak's pledge to stop the boats is actually slightly more complicated. If you look at the text, it says that he wants to pass new laws to make sure people are swiftly detained and removed. That is Rishi Sunak's pledge. The process has started today. He says he's ready for a fight with the courts, but actually stopping small boats, well, that is something quite different.
In Downing Street, thank you. A young girl shot dead in her home in Liverpool screamed to her mother to say she was scared, a court heard today. The final seconds before Olivia Pratt-Corbell's murder were described by her mother and read to a jury by prosecutors. The alleged gunman is on trial for murder, as our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, reports.
7 months after her daughter's death, Cheryl Corbell's own words describing what happened that night were presented to the jury in the trial of the man accused of murdering her.
Yeah.
They heard how 9-year-old Olivia Pratt-Corbell had called out, "Mum, I'm scared," before being shot in the chest. The prosecution say Thomas Cashman was the gunman who took his pursuit of his intended target that night into Olivia's home and took her life. Who, when that man, Joseph Nee, forced his way through the door, kept firing. David McLaughlin, KC, told the jury, Cheryl said, "I was just screaming to go away. And then I heard the gunshot and realised. I felt it. It hit my hand." She referred to Olivia as the baby. "I remember when I turned round and realised the baby was right behind me because she'd obviously come down the stairs because she'd heard." One of the other children heard Cheryl scream. Livia had been hit. On the stairs, she told Olivia, "Stay with me, baby." Olivia was pronounced dead in hospital. The prosecution say that's what this case is all about, the ruthless pursuit of Thomas Cashman to shoot Joseph Nee at all costs without any consideration of anyone else in the community. The result was that 2 people were wounded, and Mr. McLaughlin said most tragically of all that Olivia Pratt-Corbell was killed. After the shooting, the prosecution say Thomas Cashman went to the home of a woman he trusted. They say when she saw the news about Olivia, though, she said she broke down. "I couldn't protect him," she said. She didn't want Olivia's mum not to have answers. Thomas Cashman denies all the charges. The trial's expected to last 4 weeks. Greg Milam, Sky News.
Perhaps the most hardline union in the public sector strikes this winter has suspended action by some of its workers tonight. The RMT say they have received a new pay offer from Network Rail. Well, our business correspondent Paul Kelso is with me now. So another union suspending action. What are the details of this, Paul?
Yeah, the RMT has been in dispute for months, since last summer. Two disputes, one with Network Rail, which runs stations, track signals, one with the train operating companies. They say they've received a new offer from Network Rail. The last offer was 5% pay rise this financial year, 4% next. They rejected it. There is now a new offer on the table, and as a result, they have withdrawn this strike action. I think we can look at the dates that the strikes were due to happen. Now, the Network Rail dispute, the strike day, the full strike day, was the 16th of March, they say, next Thursday, as well as a single-day strike action, about 6 weeks of overtime bans, which are hugely disruptive to the operation of the network. Those have all been suspended. I'm told there will be a referendum on this offer, perhaps not a full postal ballot. The previous referendum, electronically done, had a recommendation to reject the pay offer, and the members did that. We don't know whether there'll be any recommendation to go with this. It should be said those strike dates have gone, but the other two dates you could see there, the 18th and the 30th of March, as well as April the 1st, that's strike action against the train operating companies. They remain for now, so there will still be strikes on those dates, but we are promised an update from the RMT, possibly tomorrow. There's been some pressure from the employers. They've said to the RMT, look, if you're not going to even consider putting this stuff to members, we're not going to talk to you. So an attempt perhaps to call the union's bluff. Plenty of people have tried to call the RMT's bluff in the past and found strikes going ahead. So we wait and see if this is the start of a softening from the rail unions.
OK, Paul, we'll wait and see, as you say. Thank you. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says a gunman who killed two Israeli brothers in cold blood has been eliminated. It followed a raid by Israeli forces on the West Bank town of Jenin. They suspected the Palestinian man of shooting the brothers from a Jewish settlement in Huwara 10 days ago. Well, the violence in Huwara itself has also continued. Sky's Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle reports from there.
Israeli forces entered the Palestinian town of Jenin after an intelligence tip-off that a wanted terrorist was hiding there. They surrounded a building and a gun battle broke out when the militants refused to surrender. The Israeli soldiers killed the gunman suspected of shooting dead two Israeli brothers in the Palestinian town of Huwara 10 days ago. The incident led to violent riots in the town and renewed tensions in the West Bank.
לוחמינו האמיצים פעלו באופן כירורגי בלב מאורת המרצחים. אני משבח אותם ושולח איחולי החלמה לפצועים מקרב כוחותינו. כפי שאני חוזר ואומר, פעם אחר פעם, מי שיפגע בנו, דמו בראשו.
Last night, Israeli settlers attacked Huwara again. They threw rocks at shops and cars, including one with a young Palestinian family inside.
I have a daughter in a home. She called me. She was crying. What is happening? What's the matter? She told me that the settlers is coming to the home. I was here. I told her to close the door, don't open the door, stay in one of the room. Before they reach you, we will be there.
Palestinian residents have now set up a nightly neighborhood watch to try and prevent further attacks. Israeli soldiers are still patrolling the town, but in fewer numbers. And Palestinians we spoke to said they don't believe that they are being protected by the military. Do you feel safe here at the moment?
Actually, nobody is safe here. All people around 7 o'clock, all people come and start closing. We ask him why we are closing, because it's not safe here.
The Muslim holy month of Ramadan is now just 2 weeks away. This year, it again coincides with the Jewish festival of Passover. There is a growing fear that it will be a particularly violent period here, and nothing has happened as yet to avoid that. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in the West Bank.
A vigil has taken place in Cardiff for 3 people who were found dead in a car crash 2 days after they went missing. Darcy Ross, Eve Smith and Raphael Jean were found yesterday, having been reported missing following a night out in the city on Friday. 2 other passengers remain in a critical condition following the crash. An 11-year-old boy has died in a fire at a flat in East London. Firefighters were called to the blaze just after 3 o'clock this afternoon in Barking. 4 other people, including 2 children, have been taken to hospital. Sir Graham Brady has become the latest prominent Conservative MP to announce he won't stand at the next general election. He's best known as the long-time chair of the 1922 Backbench Committee, which has been central in ousting the last 3 prime ministers. Well, it is a stark reminder of how the Russian state cracks down on dissent. A student activist jailed for more than 8 years for using social media to criticise the war in Ukraine. Before his sentencing, he told our Moscow correspondent, Diana Magnay, that people in Russia had to fight their fear of speaking out.
A last brave statement to the assembled press. In English, he'd rehearsed with his lawyer.
You must understand that Russia is not Putin. We didn't vote for him, and he didn't ask us about starting this war with our closest neighbors.
23-year-old Dimitri Ivanov, sentenced to 8.5 years in jail for supposedly publishing fake news about the Russian armed forces on his student Telegram channel. Reposts about alleged Russian war crimes in Mariupol and Bucha. Reposts of President Zelensky's accusations against Russia. And Dima, what message do you have to people in Russia who are scared to speak out?
My message to people in Russia is fight with their scare and do what they can.
His lawyer clapped outside the courtroom for the work that she does. But she says it is impossible to bring witnesses, refugees in Russia from Ukraine, for example, to disprove these fake news charges.
I cannot re-traumatize them with no guarantee of their safety afterwards.
And would you therefore be able, do you think, to use, for example, witness testimony of people who are in Bucha, who are now in Europe? Video witness testimony in a Russian court?
They denied us to take as evidence, even translated investigations of New York Times, for example, translated reports of Amnesty International, the UN report. The Scot didn't take even that.
The only visible signs of protest in Moscow over the past few weeks were people leaving flowers here at the statue of a famous Ukrainian poet, Lesia Ukrainka, starting in January when a residential building in Dnipro was bombed. People were detained, but the flowers kept coming for weeks after, and again on the anniversary of the war. When people ask why don't the Russian people protest more, well, this is why. This is what having no freedom of speech actually means. Endless detentions, endless court hearings, the relentless one-way march of Russian justice. So most people do stay silent, or they look the other way, because they know that the state is watching and they know what that means. Diana Magnay, Sky News, Moscow.
For the first time ever tonight, Britain is burning coal as part of an emergency scheme to deal with a surge in energy use. It's because of the combination of the freezing temperatures, low wind and the pressure on gas supplies. The generating plants involved, though, are due to be phased out by the end of next year, as our climate change and energy correspondent Hannah ThomasPeter explains.
As the coldest night of the year approaches, Britain is shivering. Arctic air dropping down from the north and set to stay for days. It's putting pressure on our electricity system. The national grid, for the first time this winter, activating emergency coal units that have been standing by in case of a shortage.
The challenge we often face on very cold days is getting through the short but intense period of demand as everyone gets home from work and school. That's millions of households putting the kettle on, turning the heating up and making an evening meal, all at the same time.
When it's windy, we usually make more than enough power to cover that. But right now, it's relatively still. Imports from Europe via subsea connectors can also help, but France, a major partner, has had limited supplies because of maintenance issues and strikes at nuclear plants.
Some of it was actually running through the night last night.
Coal came to the rescue this time. But it is the dirtiest of fossil fuels and has no future in the UK's clean energy transition, phased out by the end of next year.
I'm actually quite strongly against that. We only really have 2 coal power stations open. We do have a third this winter, West Burton, but that's certainly going to close in March. I think it would be much better to keep all of that open for as long as possible, and even to relax the 2024 date. I don't think that 2 coal power stations are really moving the dial when it comes to emissions, but they can be very important when we have shortages such as the ones we're seeing at the moment.
This deep freeze, a reminder that the energy systems we rely on cannot be taken for granted. Decarbonising power by the middle of next decade, as the government has promised, was never going to be simple. Hannah ThomasPeter, Sky News.